Otherwise, the film is completely boring. But that aspect of it is fantastic.
It's part of Criterion's Has Its Moments collection. This time we watched KTMA episode 16, City on Fire.
Featuring an excellent recipe for an egg smoothie. Yum, 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 yum.
But first, some follow-up.
Yes, we got a little bit of follow-up, but you might remember that last episode we were looking at parts of the Clonus horror, and we were talking about some of the various films and whatnot that talk about cloning in interesting ways. And we got a letter here from listener Beth, who, wait a minute, I know that name.
What? Could that be a voice from the past?
A voice from the past, a voice from the future, right now making herself known as a voice from the present, as she writes in to say, one clone pop culture item I didn't hear mentioned, Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro, which sounds like it might essentially be a highbrow version of Clonus Wars. She's never read it, although she does like Ishiguro. Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Beth, for writing in, and it's always good to hear from you, and we'll have to have you back on the show soon. But yes, indeed, Never Let Me Go was on my list. I had taken a few notes of it, although I haven't read it or seen the film that was made of it either. I assume you haven't seen or read it?
I always intended to read it because I heard good things about it when it came out. Like, when she mentioned the title, it immediately brought me back to, it's like, oh yeah, that would have been relevant. That's a thing I heard about and forgot about. I had no idea there was a film.
Oh yeah, there was a film made in 2010. The novel does indeed deal with a group of people who are raised to be body part clones, and they find out and how they sort of deal with that. I don't think it's quite as sensationalistic, perhaps, as Clonus is, but it does seem to be touching on some of the same themes. So, listeners, if you've read this book or seen the movie and you want to chime in, feel free. But remember, Beth got there first.
Yeah, you can only be so special. You can get silver place.
In other news, we are recording this and releasing this at an awkward time. The Mads either will be or more likely will have just done another night of shorts.
Yay!
Which is always exciting, and I'm sure that I either enjoyed it or will enjoy it once I've gotten around to seeing it. Because again, as always, if you sign up for the Mads shows, you get a download code afterwards. So you don't have to watch it that night if you're going to be busy or fancy or whatever. You can watch it whenever you're ready.
Yeah, and you can take breaks during the shorts if you have a VOD. My God, it's convenient. I mean, you could really space out the viewing so that you have an MST3K-esque treat every day, if you like, for about a week or so.
Exactly. So hopefully that went well, and hopefully they have announced the next movie, and heck, maybe even future editing me will be dropping in right now to talk about what the next movie they're going to do is. But either way, we can compare that to the fact that over on the MST3K side of things, as part of a Kickstarter update, they have announced new tour dates.
Ooh, exciting. Boy, Chris, tell me, are they coming to Canada finally? Are they going to grace our nation?
Well, now let me check. They're adding new dates all the time, but so far, no.
Aww.
Absolutely not.
Those charlatans.
I will admit that there are all sorts of visa reasons why it's tricky for American touring groups to visit Canada, but I don't care. They need to come up here. Emily and the rest of the traveling crew need to sneak up across the border and do a little show right here in Toronto. Our borders will be open by then. Don't you worry. Shows are going to be starting in late October and rolling around, it looks like, at least until February. So there'll definitely be a chance to see something. And, maybe we'll make a road trip and go down to Kalamazoo or Detroit or Rochester, or see one of the ones that's reasonably close by. We have to figure that out. But we'll have links in the show notes, but MST3KLive.com will have the information for you. They are doing a particular movie, are they not, that they've already announced?
Yes, I'm stuck on the title though. I think it's called like Strange Magic.
It's called Making Contact.
Making Contact. Yes, I was close, wasn't I? Yes, Making Contact is a goofy 80s movie that I have heard about but have never seen. And the clips that were dropped as part of that sort of live show trailer were promising. So this should be a treat and a great way to get to know some of the fresher faces on MST3K by going to this show.
Excellent. Well, I think that is all the news we have this time around, and much of that was probably fairly old news for anyone listening, but that's okay. So let's set a city on fire and get straight to the movie stuff.
Whoosh. I'm on fire.
This time we watched KTMA episode 16, City on Fire. Well, it's the 70s again. Leslie Nielsen plays the corrupt mayor of an American city with an awful lot of signage in French. How corrupt is he? Why, he's so corrupt that he was willing to let them build a massive refinery right downtown. Now, the refinery employs a schmo named Herman, who not only doesn't get the promotion he's been waiting many, many years to get, but he also gets sent off to another department entirely. Well, Herman turns down the new assignment and, frustrated with his schmoiness, starts turning cranks and flipping switches until boom, explosion, and soon we have our titular city on fire. The first explosions happen while Mayor Leslie Nielsen is presiding over a ceremony where a new wing of a hospital is being dedicated, thanks to a major donation from rich widow Susan Clark, who was the mom from Webster. Also, our schmo Herman went to high school for a hot minute with Susan Clark, who was the mom from Webster, and I guess has always had the hots for her. But Susan Clark, who was the mom from Webster, only has eyes for... Well, actually, I guess at one point she had eyes for Mayor Leslie Nielsen, but now she's into bland Dr. Barry Newman, our ostensible but utterly unmemorable hero. Anyway, the hospital is right next door to the refinery, and the fires are getting closer, and the oxygen is quickly running out, and will they be able to evacuate everyone in time? Oh, and will someone give news anchor Ava Gardner a damn drink so she can continue reporting on the fires for another hour? Yes, most people will be saved, but not our schmo Herman. But no, Ava will have to wait until the fires have calmed down before she gets that drink. The end.
Meanwhile, on the satellite of love, record scratch. Oh, better make that. Meanwhile, at Gizmonic Institute, we open with things on a down note. Dr. Earhart rushes in with bad news. The Mad Scientist League are revoking Dr. F and Dr. E's mad science licenses, and they are, at best, mildly peeved researchers. They'll have to go back to the private sector, which is the last place you'd want to be since they expect results. In an unusual move for the series, Joel and the bots are completely unseen in this prologue. We're back on the Satellite of Love for segment 2, and it's prank time. Tom claims to be spying on cosmonaut babes who haven't drawn their shades when Joel comes in with an expense report claiming they're way over on WD-40. When Joel peeps through the telescope, we see he's fallen for the oldest trick in the book and suddenly sports a black circle around his eye. Hey, how do you do that prank anyway? Do you Sharpie the eyepiece? Anyway, Tom tells Joel that he looks like Petey from Our Gang, which is probably the funniest moment in this episode. In segment 3, Joel invites the bots to imagine him as a woman. It doesn't go well. This is all prelude to an invention Joel's showing off. It's the Hell in a Handbag, where the handbag in question contains an open flame to ward off purse snatchers. Then, in the 4th segment, Joel leads the bots in a military cadence. Finally, Joel invites viewers to send their letters to the MST3K Info Club. Fun fact, Gypsy's not in the fan club certificate because she drew it. Crow can be heard to say, as the episode fades out, "Keep those drawings coming." Oh, they will, Crow. They will.
So I think you're supposed to take ink like you would use in a fountain pen and rub that around the eyepiece, and that gets onto the eye.
See, that would make sense, although that would also make sense in regards to why you haven't seen this prank done in your lifetime unless you were born before, like, 1960.
This is indeed one of the most recent occurrences of this prank I can think of. City on Fire, back into the old KTMA season.
Yes, it's not the highlight of the KTMAs, but it is a KTMA episode.
It's fine.
Yeah, it's there.
It exists. There are jokes, I guess. They pass by. They make the time as you walk towards the grave a little more bearable.
Mm-hmm. I mean, isn't it just nice to be around the KTMA cast? You get Dr. Earhart before his voice got all annoying in season 1. You get the weird silhouettes of the smaller theater of the KTMA era, and of course, you get the grainy film quality of someone who's just taped this episode off VHS and was kind enough to upload it to the internet.
Exactly. I mean, I think you've talked before about, you said this about the KTMA Gamera episode, of course, which I disagree with, but this is one where you're just watching the movie with some friends, and these friends are moderately funny, but not so funny that you're going to remember any of the jokes afterwards, really. But it is going to make watching this terrible, terrible movie a little more pleasant.
Yes, it can be kindly described as pleasant enough.
Yeah. I don't know. If you have to watch City on Fire, this is probably the way you want to do it. But you could do a lot better. There's not really a tremendous amount to recommend this late 70s disaster film.
No, this one's a bit of a dud, although I will give credit where credit is due, which is to say, thank heavens for the stunts. There is a guy on fire who runs into the street and then gets run over.
Yes.
And that's spectacular. And there's a man who's grasping a pole for dear life and then takes a major fall. Like, that stuff is glorious. The stunts are really good. There's too few of them. There's like a montage of stunts when the fire first breaks out and you think, oh, this is going to be a spectacular. And it's like, no, they blew all their money on those like 5 minutes of stunts.
I mean, it felt like there was a tremendous number of gratuitous people on fire running away from the camera, and yet also that like there weren't enough of them. It was amazing. That and Leslie Nielsen is a complete delight.
Leslie Nielsen steals the show.
I think the show is given to him on a plate. Nobody else wants a piece of it.
Well, even so, he's the one who's making a meal of everything, and thank goodness he's around, because everything else is so gray and boring.
Well, more on him later. But the other thing I want to say is that I did manage to watch a little bit of the movie unmisted in a reasonable quality print. This is not like phase 4 levels of unwatchable, this episode as we have it, but it's not ideal for watching a disaster movie to have everything sort of incredibly grainy and hard to make out. And I just wanted to see if the fire sequence looked fantastic. And they don't look fantastic, but they look better than Avalanche.
Well, that's promising.
In fact, I'll say this movie is better than Avalanche in almost every conceivable way.
Well, I'd say that because as good as Robert Forster was in Avalanche, Leslie Nielsen is a million times better in City on Fire.
Exactly. And, the fire effects are not bad at all. I mean, it's actual fire, right? They filmed this in Montreal, which is why all the signs are in French and a bunch of the cast is Canadian, but more on that in a bit. And they picked Montreal because it had a couple of blocks that they could literally just set on fire for a few days or whatever. Thank you, Montreal, for being like that, I guess.
Canada's generous like that.
And so, yeah, it's pretty impressive. Fire is inherently interesting to watch.
And cinematic.
Yeah, that's why you sit around a fire. We might talk more about this as well. But like, broadly speaking, fake snow is never going to compete with fire.
Especially bad fake snow.
Yeah, no, bad fake snow or really bad special effect fake snow is nothing compared to actual buildings on actual fire.
And actual people on actual fire, which is just like good value for your dollar. That's how if an exploitation movie is completely out of ideas, just set a stuntman on fire and we will at least be entertained for that moment, because it always works.
That or just show some kids smoking.
Yes, which is also inherently funny and very, very 70s.
Do you think, I'm trying to remember now, the kids don't try to smoke in Mac and Me or anything, right?
Not to my knowledge.
Like, have we seen an MST3K episode since season 1 where kids smoke?
Not that I can think of. I am, I'm stuck on kids behaving badly. These problem children are nowhere to be found in MST3K, to my knowledge.
I mean, well, Kenny never gets around to it in any of the Gamera films.
No, Gamera does all the smoking for him.
Exactly. I don't know. There may be something that I'm not thinking about, but I was thinking as I was watching this, like, this movie is not good MST3K fodder.
No, although it like you think it would be. Like with the cast that it has, which we'll talk about later, and just the spectacle, you think, oh, this will be a fun ride. And maybe in a later season, they could have made like stronger hay out of it. But it's kind of a flat movie with like nothing. It's never outrageous as a movie, and it's never inept enough as a movie to really seem worth the MST3K treatment.
Exactly. They were looking for Avalanche, and they didn't get that.
No.
They got a much more toned down, much more both competent but more boring version of that kind of disaster movie. And, they don't know that yet, is the sense that I got from it. Like, it's early days. This is the 16th episode ever of the show. They don't know that this is the type of movie they should probably avoid.
Yeah, it took them a very long time to realize that what they really needed were either giant turtle movies or Miles O'Keefe movies.
The human equivalent of a giant turtle.
Oh my God, yeah, he's America's answer to Gamera. It's Miles O'Keefe in a low angle.
Well, as we discussed in our episode on Avalanche a few episodes ago, if you're going to do a 70s disaster movie, one of the whole big dealios of it is to just pack it full of stars. And so, of course, we have some familiar faces this time around. But here's the trick. Many of these familiar faces turn out to not be as familiar to me as I thought.
Oh.
Like, we're going to start with Ava Gardner, who I was pretty sure, like, I knew the name. I was like, oh, yeah, I must have seen a million Ava Gardner films somewhere. I don't recognize... I recognize the names of some of them, but I've never seen Night of the Iguana.
No, and from what I understand, it's not about a giant iguana.
No, it's Tennessee Williams, so it's going to be a metaphor.
Oh,
and you know how I feel about metaphors.
No good.
He got me with the cat on a hot tin roof. I'm not gonna fall for it again.
Yes. What the movie version of that desperately needed was a Pink Panther-esque opening cartoon.
Yeah, so you could leave immediately afterwards.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on Ava Gardner? She is like a beloved classic Hollywood icon.
Yeah, and yet, this movie doesn't really inspire me to think fondly of her.
She's just there. She's a newscaster. She's stressed. She wants a drink. She doesn't get to have a drink. She gets shoved into a shower at some point with all her clothing on.
I thought that was her arc, is that she was finally going to get that drink, like at the end.
She does, but we cut before she actually gets to drink, so.
Yeah, we never get the satisfaction. Maybe that's in the uncut version. But
maybe in City on Fire 2.
Still smoking.
Yeah.
The thing I found most interesting about her were her nicknames listed on the IMDb, which are Snowdrop, Angel, the Christmas Eve Girl, and my personal favorite, and one I'd like to take for myself, the world's most beautiful animal.
Wow. I mean, she's not unattractive. I'll certainly say that. I don't want to define her based on the people she married, but the people she married were Mickey Rooney, Artie Shaw, and Frank Sinatra.
Yeah.
And that's some real terrible choices.
It's hard to pick the worst one, though I imagine it's Frank Sinatra.
It's absolutely Frank Sinatra. But Artie Shaw was also awful. He got married 8 times. 2 of them were annulled. just awful. Perfectly good musician, which is more than you can say for Frank Sinatra. But
yes, I mean, have you heard his version of Something, George Harrison's Something? Oh my God.
God, I can't even imagine. Anyway, so yeah, Ava Gardner, she was in lots of movies. She was also in Earthquake in 1974. So this was not even her only disaster movie.
Right. Earthquake is, as I recall, more notoriously bad than this.
I mean, it's got a screenplay by Mario Puzo, who's
interesting choice.
Yep.
No wonder it's a bit of a flop there.
Well, all right. We move on from Ava Gardner to another big name and a relatively small role in this film, as is the way. Henry Fonda, who plays the city fire chief Albert Risley.
And there I have to ask the question, are you Fonda of Henry Fonda?
You know, again, this is another one where I was like, oh, I know lots and lots of Henry Fonda movies. I haven't seen any of these.
Oh, I have seen 12 Angry Men.
I hear that it's good.
12 Angry Men is legitimately great. It's really riveting. It's one of my favorite genres of anything, which is let's watch the actors act.
Yes.
It's just getting a bunch of men who clearly trained in theater to just riff on each other, and it's great. It's a really compelling movie. I've always been tempted to see the remake of it because George C. Scott is in that, and that is an actor I want to see yell at people. But Tony Danza is also in the remake, so I'm not sure I want to see it.
No, does he yell at Tony Danza?
I mean, it'd be great if he yelled at Tony Danza, but Tony Danza also has to do yelling, and unless he's yelling Angela, I don't care.
I don't think he can move his mouth in any other way.
Yeah, he's pretty stiff and limited, like a very bad Weta prop.
I guess technically I have seen Grapes of Wrath, but it was a long time ago, and I remember nothing about it.
Except John Carradine, of course.
Yeah. Let's move on to James Franciscus, who plays Maggie, Ava Gardner's assistant, named apparently Jimbo.
Yes, that threw me off a little bit hearing the name Jimbo in the movie uttered so casually. It's like, really, Jimbo?
Yeah. So first and foremost, for all of our MST3K viewers, which I assume most of you are, this is not Tony Franciosa, the Finder of Lost Loves.
No.
This is James Franciscus, who was in a few other misted movies, notably Killer Fish and Marooned/Space Travelers.
Yes. And, James Franciscus is, in everything I've seen him in, fine.
Sure.
he's fine. The best movie that he ever did, and we talked about this on the show before, so I'll be brief, is Beneath the Planet of the Apes, because that movie is bonkers.
He was in a movie that I saw the title for, and I had to look at it, and it's called I Passed for White. Now, it's not James Franciscus passing for white. It's the woman he marries in the film.
Oh, okay.
Who is a light-skinned woman of mixed African and European ancestry. It's from 1960, so this is still a big issue. James Franciscus falls in love with her. They get married. She doesn't disclose her ethnic identity because, I think it's reasonable to not do that, but this becomes a lot of tension when she gets pregnant and she's worried that the baby's going to look clearly black. And there's a sort of comedy of errors apparently around this. Oh. And as soon as she wakes up out of childbirth, she blurts out, "Is the baby black?" Which makes James Franciscus's character think that she's been cheating on him.
Yes.
So they divorce and she goes back home to her family and never tells James Franciscus that she was not considered fully white. I thought that was wild. I have not heard of this movie before, and I'm not surprised that it exists. This is totally a kind of movie that I can imagine out in the world, but I guess it just never occurred to me. The other thing about this movie that struck me as kind of interesting was that the music was by Jerry Irvin and a guy who is credited as Johnny Williams.
Now, is that the Johnny Williams?
That is the John Williams, as in every other movie that's ever been made.
Okay, so it is John Williams as he used to be credited in his Lost in Space days.
Yes, exactly. And this is 1960, right? So yeah, that's who it is. Who knows? But I'm super curious about that movie now, although I imagine it's really hard to watch.
Yeah, I can only imagine, hearing the music. It's like, is the baby black? Da, 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 da.
If it comes out of Velociraptor, that's fantastic. Okay, well, that's James Franciscus. We move on, ever bravely, to our hero, Barry Newman.
Boo.
He is so aggressively boring as our hero, Dr. Frank Whitman. He has absolutely no stage presence. I just don't care. I guess he's supposed to be a bit of a romantic dog. That doesn't seem convincing at all.
No.
He can't even, like, there's a scene where he's leading children out an escape route and trying to do a little happy little march to get them excited. And even that he doesn't sell. Like, this is terrible.
No. And like the whole like aspect of him like being this sort of like playboy. Wow. Apologies to any James Bond actor I spoke ill of because they make it look easy.
I guess he's known for being in a movie called Vanishing Point, as well as a TV show that he starred in called Petrocelli. I've never heard of that.
No.
Never heard of Vanishing Point either. And all I know about it was that the role that he got was supposed to go to Gene Hackman, but 20th Century Fox insisted on using this guy instead.
So what you're saying is that Vanishing Point had a chance to be good, but instead is not.
I guess. I mean, I'm not going to watch it. That's for damn sure.
I mean, Gene Hackman, he's good in everything.
Exactly. So there's really nothing at all to say about Barry Newman. He's a waste of space. I'm sorry that we talked about him for a few minutes.
For shame.
He's still alive and he's in his 80s, but if he's on Twitter, I doubt it's any good.
No, I imagine he does not have good tweets, nor does he like good tweets.
And so we're going to move on to Susan Clark, a.k.a. the mom from Webster, who's playing rich benefactor Diana Brockhurst-Lautrec.
Yes, I recognize her because she does have a couple of credits of things that I have seen. I really am fond of Colossus the Forbidden Project, though it's been over a decade since I've seen it. So mostly I remember the conflict between Eric Braeden and the President of the United States, who's played by Newfoundland's own Gordon Pinsent, and the Colossus computer who has the delightful speaking voice of "I am Colossus."
Oh, right.
So it's, that's a great movie. Is Susan Clark in it? I'll give that a resounding probably.
Yes, she is. Yes, she is. She's also in Airport 1975, which I think is the one you watched.
Oh no, that's the one with Karen Black. That's not the one I watched.
Yes, this is the one with Karen Black. So, yes, okay. So she's not in the one that you watched. Well, she's in another airport movie, I'm sorry to say. Yet another 70s disaster movie. She's also in Porky's.
Yes, which I have seen. That's one of 3 movies, actually, I've discovered that I've seen with Susan Clark in them. She plays a character named Cherry Forever, and I'll be damned if I can remember. Like, maybe Cherry Forever is the prostitute that all the boys go and see in Porky's? I don't know.
I don't know. I haven't seen it. Come on.
I don't recommend Porky's, to be honest. If you watch Bob Clark movies, that's not one to see. She is also in Arthur Penn's Night Moves, which is a terrific movie with Gene Hackman. But I mostly remember Gene Hackman and the other leads, but she's not one of the main players in it. She has a smaller role, so I don't really recall.
I mean, I mostly remember her from Webster.
How is Webster?
I can't imagine it stands up. But we watched it pretty regularly when I was young.
Popular in the household.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I only just realized after looking this up right now is that one of the reasons that she was on Webster was that her husband on the show, Alex Karras, was her husband in real life.
Oh, it's not because the projected audience was big Porky's fans?
I guess not. I don't know why big Porky's fans want to see a show about, a nice middle-aged white couple adopting a 5-year-old African-American orphan.
So it's a little sweet after the savory of Porky's.
I suppose. Ay. Anyway, Webster. It was charming enough at the time, and it definitely made the march to death go a little more softly.
Oh, wait. Susan Clark was in another thing I've seen that I don't remember from.
Oh, no. What now?
She stars in the Apple Dumpling Gang with Don Knotts.
Oh, yeah.
And I gotta tell you, I love Don Knotts. And that was a very fond memory for when I was like 8 years old. But I don't remember her being in it.
She's second billed.
I know. But you watch Don Knotts movies for Don Knotts.
No, that's fine. She plays the stagecoach driver, Magnolia Dusty Clydesdale. I don't know. I've seen bits of that, but I haven't seen the whole thing. Did you think anything of Susan Clark in this movie?
No. No, I did not.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't think of anyone. She came in a distant second, maybe in terms of people who put in any effort.
There's a surprise considering who we were going to talk about next.
No, I know. One of the biggest disappointments of the movie, Shelley Winters is in it, playing a nurse.
Yeah.
And and she's boring as all get out, which is not what I come to Shelley Winters for.
No, I was expecting a real ham sandwich.
Yeah. So what have you seen Shelley Winters in?
Oh, I've seen the Poseidon Adventure, and let's see, I'll surreptitiously look at the IMDb just to make sure, because that was kind of fun doing it with Susan Clark and realizing that she's in a Columbo episode. Susan Clark, she's in everything I've seen, and I don't ever remember her. No, so with Shelley Winters, I mean, I've seen Lolita, the Kubrick Lolita, and again, she is fun in that. I remember her as a child, in that she had like periodic appearances as a grandma on Roseanne.
Yes,
at the insistence of Roseanne, I believe.
Yeah, I think she plays Roseanne's mother.
Yeah,
am I right? Yeah, she was very fun on that. It's definitely a role that was designed for her.
And she's in a movie that I've been dying to watch and I've been like never gotten around to, which is the famed Robert Mitchum vehicle, Night of the Hunter, which is supposed to be so good.
Ah, yes. I haven't seen that. In fact, I think the only thing, well, I guess I've seen Pete's Dragon when I was a kid. She's in that.
Too, yeah.
I don't remember anything about it.
No.
What I do remember, of course, is her appearance in the Poseidon Adventure, which basically is the definition of Shelley Winters to me, and I think a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
So the Poseidon Adventure is one of the few 70s disaster films that I had seen before we started doing this passel of them recently. And so I decided to rewatch it. I hadn't seen it since I was a kid. And now, when was the last time you saw the Poseidon Adventure?
Oh, I'd say I was about like 11 years old. It was like the NTV late night movie.
Okay, I would have been maybe a little younger than that. So do you remember the plot?
Well, yeah, they're on a submarine.
They're not on a submarine, no.
Okay, then I don't remember the plot.
Okay.
Oh, I was thinking of Das Boat, my favorite Shelley Winters movie.
They are on a cruise ship, like a Titanic Love Boat style cruise ship that's on its last legs. It's going to be turned into scrap, and the owner wants to make sure it gets into its next port, into Athens. It's going transatlantic. Wants to get it there as quickly as possible. And while it's going there, there is some disastrous event that causes a tsunami that tips over the entire boat. It capsizes and starts sinking, and there's a group of people trying to get out. In fact, there's several different people who are trying to get out going different ways. We're following the successful group, which is led by Gene Hackman.
Hey, the real hero.
He's good in everything. The person he reaches loggerheads with in this is Ernest Borgnine.
Ooh.
Let's see. It's got Red Buttons, who's an old-time comedy type person, in as the very old man who's going to fall in love with a very young woman over the course of trying to get out of it. It's a little upsetting, but it's what are you going to do? And there's like a precocious 11-year-old boy who knows the layout of the ship intimately, and his older sister who thinks he's annoying. And of course, there's Shelley Winters and her husband in the movie, whose name I don't remember. Doesn't matter. But Shelley Winters is there as this sort of vivacious woman who, just wants to get to Jerusalem and see her 2-year-old grandson for the first time and give them this pendant. And she's got a big personality, and she makes lots of jokes about how she's a very heavyset woman. And yet, in the moment in the film that I always remembered from my childhood, there's a section where they're trying to get from one room to another, and it's flooded enough that they have to sort of do a complicated, like 45-second long swim. And Gene Hackman goes and it's like going to be the first one through and, put a rope so everybody can follow. And he gets stuck under a piece of metal that falls down. And she's all excited because she was a childhood swimmer. And so she was going to do this. And she's like, yes, it's my time to shine. I've been heavy. I've been hard to get through all these places. I've been panicking. I've been annoying to everybody. But this I can do. And she takes a deep breath and she dives into the water and she goes and she moves the metal up front and frees Gene Hackman. And they get across to the other side. And then she has a heart attack and dies.
Oh,
it's very sad. It's very scary in many ways. And it's very striking. I mean, that was just indelibly burnt into my brain. And I realized as I was watching this movie that, we have a sort of template of a disaster movie. And this is an interesting movie for switching that up because, we think of disaster movies as sort of like you have to wait forever for the disaster to really happen. Like certainly in the original Airport, you had to wait for it. But even in this film, you had this sort of micro fire that they deal with before the real city on fire happens. You had a little potential snow problem in Avalanche before the real snow happens. In this film, you actually do get a little storm at the very opening credits. And then I don't think it's even 30 minutes in when yep, the ship is upside down. It is very swift. And most of the movie is about this handful of people trying to get out and several of them dying. Roddy McDowall dies early on. A few other people die along the way until only a handful of them manage to get to the hull and get rescued. And I realized this is a horror movie.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Especially with the getting to the good stuff early and having especially if it has a prelude like City on Fire does with the smoking.
Yeah, exactly. And there's like cheap moralism going on, as I believe is considered all the rage in a certain type of horror movie. But also, you have made me watch a bunch of movies that are considered classics in horror over the last couple of years. I watched the original Godzilla. I watched Carnival of Souls. Yeah. I watched a few other films. I watched a few silly movies with you. What is that? Ninja 3, the deafening.
Ninja 3 The Domination, one of the defining horror movies of our time.
Which is a fabulous movie. I watched all of these movies and none of them made me feel scared or did the thing which I assume horror movies are meant to evoke in people. Horror movies can do a lot of different things, but one of the sort of primal bodily reasons why some people at least say they watch horror movies. This movie does that for me.
Really?
Yeah, I had to. It did it for me when I was a kid. It was deeply upsetting. And even after watching it this time, it's not like a good movie. It's not a bad movie, really, but it's not like a great movie or anything. But after it, I was just like, no, that was too real. I gotta lie down for an hour after having watched that and just let the energy start flowing again. It was so upsetting to watch in the way that people describe horror movies as being upsetting to watch. And I thought it was remarkable to encounter that finally after having talked with you about horror films for so many years.
Yeah, it occurs to me now that I've never seen the Poseidon Adventure.
I'm not trying to guarantee it'll have that effect on you. I'd be curious to see what you thought of it. It also has very good use of music, in that there's quite a lot of scenes without music.
Oh, okay.
In that really effective way. And of course that the music is by one John Williams.
Is he John or Johnny at that point?
He's John at this point.
Oh, boo. I prefer Johnny.
You know who else is in the Poseidon Adventure, or at least the first bit?
Well, you mentioned Roddy McDowall. That's exciting enough. Roddy McDowall, Gene Hackman, and Shelley Winters in the same movie?
Yeah, and starring as the captain who does not survive the tsunami, Leslie Nielsen.
Whoa! Canada's own,
and City of Fire's only redeeming feature, Leslie Nielsen.
100% yes, because no one is having more fun than Leslie. Leslie Nielsen is treating this movie as if it is the best part he's gotten in a long time, and I know for a fact that would not be true.
He was just in the Poseidon Adventure a few years earlier.
It's so out there that he is making a meal of this as if he is like an actor who's been out of work for some time, trying to show off what he can do. Like it's his comeback picture.
Yeah, this is his big chance.
Yeah, and it could not be a smaller chance.
Well, Leslie Nielsen is great. I think there's probably a lot of things that we could say about Leslie Nielsen. And so...
Hey everybody, it's time for the Shallow 13.
It's time for the Shallow 13, or should I say, the Nielsen 13. 13 fun facts about the best part of City of Fire, Leslie Nielsen. Go, Adam, go!
Despite praise for both his comedic and dramatic turns in film and television, what Leslie Nielsen really wanted to be known for was farting. Those who worked with the late actor confirmed that he used to carry around a portable fart machine and surreptitiously activate it during interviews or downtime with cast and crew. Presumably, Nielsen would take it home with him and just laugh at his fake farts, whether alone or with friends. We'll have a clip of Leslie Nielsen and his fart machine on Late Night with Conan O'Brien in our show notes.
The whole farting thing amused Nielsen so much that his headstone is engraved with an in-joke for his friends, family, and co-workers. Quote, "Let her rip."
On the last episode of It's Just a Show, we discussed Peter Graves as host of Biography. Leslie Nielsen was the host of a Canadian parody of the A&E series titled Liography, which aired on the Canadian Comedy Network. The now quite obscure spoof series was considered by the biography producers as infringing on their copyright, so the show was hastily retitled Liocracy in its second and final season.
Leslie Nielsen's biggest challenge as an actor wasn't typecasting, but working without a hearing aid. Nielsen was considered legally deaf for most of his life and commented about it in an interview. Quote, "You know, it's very difficult to be an actor and to have people depending on you to say the right line at the right time and to not be able to hear your cues. I can't tell you how many times I would have had to have said, 'What?' if I didn't have my hearing aids." To raise awareness, Nielsen did frequent PSAs for the Better Hearing Institute, and the ads were something of a staple in the 90s, contrasting a serious real-life Nielsen against goofy Naked Gun clips.
According to the book Mondo Canuck, A Canadian Pop Culture Odyssey, Nielsen did consider three alternatives to his career. Quote, "If I couldn't be an actor, I would only consider being an astronaut, a sea otter, or a gynecologist."
Apparently, Leslie Nielsen's rich, sonorous voice and mild manners were also something of an act, according to this choice quote that we found on the IMDb. Quote, "When I was 20, I was scared I'd be perceived as a country bumpkin. I found it necessary to cultivate a worldliness I didn't really possess, to protect myself against all my insecurities. People believed my act, and as soon as I was known as a serious actor who played serious roles, I spent the first 4 years waiting for the acting police to knock on my door, tell me I have no talent, and send me back to Canada."
Leslie Nielsen's rich career earned him 254 IMDb credits as an actor on film and television, beginning in 1950 with 2 appearances on a series titled Actors Studio before his final film, an obscure 2010 comedy called Stonerville.
And that's to say nothing of radio, as Nielsen worked for a bit as a disc jockey in Calgary before enrolling at the Lorne Green Academy of Radio Arts in Toronto, and then earning a scholarship to join a theater school in New York.
Nielsen, like many actors of his era, was also in the armed forces. Nielsen joined the Royal Canadian Air Force as a gunnery sergeant when he turned 17.
And as if Leslie Nielsen could not be more Canadian, his father Ingvard Nielsen was a member of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police.
Speaking of family, Nielsen's brother Eric declined to go into acting and instead made a name for himself in politics. Eric Nielsen is best known for serving as the Deputy Prime Minister for the disastrous Brian Mulroney Conservative government. We'll have a link to an interview where Leslie and Eric talk to the late great Canadian broadcaster Peter Zowski in our show notes.
While Nielsen is well known for being thrilled to be typecast as a comic actor after his work with Zucker Abrams Zucker, he was less fond of the baggage he apparently carried around from being in the film Forbidden Planet. He believed it was the film's popularity that prevented him from being cast in such series as the original Twilight Zone.
In our final and perhaps most endearing fact about the man, Leslie Nielsen was a Trekkie. After the first episode of the original Star Trek aired, he called the production studio to tell them how much he enjoyed the show.
Aw, and that's time.
Man, Leslie Nielsen's great.
What is your favorite Leslie Nielsen property or moment?
That is a tie. That is a tie. A three-way tie is his work in and counting this as one entity. His work in the Naked Gun / Police Squad. I believe it's the Police Squad series where he breaks into someone's office and is asked the question, "Who are you and how'd you get in here?" And his response is, "I'm a locksmith, and I'm a locksmith."
Police Squad is so good, and one of those like rare TV shows. It's 6 episodes, and that's great.
It's perfect. It's exactly what was necessary. Although I absolutely love Naked Gun, and I haven't rewatched the sequels in a long time. The Naked Gun just happened to be on Netflix in Canada a few months ago, so I happened to rewatch it and was thrilled to see that it still held up. There's again another great funny moment that I can't help but share, in which love interest Priscilla Presley starts sucking on his finger in a most erotic way, and Leslie Nielsen responds, "I've got 9 more." But the other thing I was going to mention is his terrific role in the serial comic Tales from the Crypt influenced movie Creepshow, in which he kills Ted Danson. He buries Ted Danson up to his neck in sand, and Ted Danson drowns. But Ted Danson comes back as a waterlogged zombie and does the same thing to Leslie Nielsen, and the segment ends with Leslie Nielsen delivering the immortal line, again, delivered beautifully by Nielsen, "The joke's on you. I can hold my breath for a long time." He just starts laughing maniacally.
Okay, I haven't seen that one, I have to admit.
Well, worth it.
Well, anyway, we could talk for ages about Leslie Nielsen, but we should move on. In addition to all of those famous people that were flown in, there's a bunch of Canadians who are in this, many of whom are not especially notable, but there's a few people in here who might be worth shouting out. As one of the councilmen, I don't even remember, there's a guy named Cease Linder. Is that how you say this?
I'm going to say sure.
I assume it's short for Cecil. It's just CEC. But anyway, most notably, he's in another thing that I think you quite like, Quatermass in the Pit.
Yes, I love Quatermass in the Pit, but this guy is a regular Susan Clark because I do not remember him in Quatermass in the Pit.
He's the paleontologist.
I mean, there's a paleontologist. I mean, yeah, that adds up. I don't.
Okay.
I don't deny it. It's just I don't remember him.
Well, he was in a lot of other things. He was in The Clown Murders. It's a CanCon horror film.
It's John Candy's. Well, maybe it's not his first, but it's a very early role for John Candy.
So, and you haven't done that on your other podcast, I don't think.
No. Every now and then I've threatened Sarah with doing The Clown Murders, but she's very uninterested.
Oh, you're going to have to do it sooner or later.
One of these days. If nothing else, it'll be an excuse to talk about how great John Candy is.
He was also in a film. The title. He was also in an Italian film with a long name, but it was translated into English as Super Bitch.
That'd be a great band name.
If I'm reading this correctly, it is. The original title translates more closely to "Can anyone be more of a bastard than Inspector Cliff?"
That's a great title. I mean, so is Super Bitch. So
yeah, no, you're spoiled for choice with that one. Oh man! All right. Another person that we have is Hilary LeBeau. I think we're going to say that's how she pronounced it. She now goes by Hilary Farr.
Married to Jamie Farr.
I mean, you laugh, but who's in a few films back in the day, including a very small role in the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Huh.
Yeah.
Does she teach a kid to smoke in that movie? Is there?
I don't know. She plays Betty Monroe. I don't know who that is. It's been a while since I've watched that.
Yeah.
But she's more known because since the year 2008, she's been a host of Love It or List It on HGTV/The W Network, which is still on the air.
Whoa.
Yep.
I mean, if Leslie Nielsen wasn't dead, he'd still be working. But hey, we've stumbled on our someone who is still working in this cast.
Yeah, and who lives nearby, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
She got into interior design at some point and started making that her business, and now she's on TV doing that. And yeah, she runs a company of it, and she is a renovator to the stars, including having renovated Jenna Elfman's home.
Not even a real Elfman, Jenna Elfman.
Well, there you go. Let's see who else here. We've got this is a name that I don't know, but you pulled it out. Kenneth Healy Ray.
Yes, he's doing the sound design on the movie.
Who is he?
He's done several Bob Clark movies, but he's done a ton of things. But he's done with Bob Clark. He of course did Porky's and Porky's 2 the Next Day and Loose Cannons with Gene Hackman. But more importantly, he did all the good Bob Clark movies: Dead of Night, Black Christmas, and A Christmas Story. In addition to all the crappy Bob Clark movies: From the Hip, Porky's 1 and 2, and Loose Cannons.
Okay, so kind of a mixed blessing.
Yes. He was apparently, there's an obit for him in the Globe and Mail, where apparently he was, very, very easily approachable for mentorship and for helping people out who are getting their start in the industry, which makes him seem like a real nice guy.
Good. We've also got the producer of the film, Claude Heroux.
Yes. And Claude Heroux is going to be a name that's familiar to David Cronenberg fans, as he produced Scanners and The Brood as well.
And Videodrome.
Yes. The best of the Cronenberg movies.
All right. Good. Those seem more competently produced than this one.
100%, yes. Especially Videodrome.
Oh, he was also the producer of Jacques Brel's Alive and Well and Living in Paris.
Oh, I've not seen that.
I've seen bits of it. I didn't make it to the end, but it's basically just a film in which some people cavort and sing Jacques Brel songs.
Okay.
You don't need to watch it
Fair
unless
enough.
you really love Jacques Brel, which, is a reasonable position to have in this world. Okay, well, that is a lot of people.
Is it possible that we've done an entire episode of Familiar Faces, Chris? Is it possible?
Well, we've talked about the actors in City of Fire and some of the crew at the very least. Is there anything else that we should talk about this otherwise not especially remarkable episode?
Oh, yes, 100%. So don't put that fire out just yet, because there was a moment where the newscaster's on screen and Tom Servo likens them to Max Headroom.
Can you tell she's computer animated?
Our cameras
Maggie
were there
Headroom.
last night.
Ah, yes. Beloved Max Headroom.
Yes, and you know what? How fitting that we talked about Leslie Nielsen, beloved Canadian. We get to talk about Matt Frewer, beloved Canadian, or specifically his alter ego of Max Headroom.
Max Headroom. What a delight that was in the 80s.
Yes, it's one of those things that there's a part of me that wants it to come back and yet knows deep in my heart that it should never come back.
I mean, apparently it was in Pixels. I don't know whether Matt Frewer played him in that movie.
I watched the clip on YouTube. He did, and it sucked.
Oh no. Okay. Well, that's good to know. No. So let's make it very clear that that was a great thing from its time.
Yes.
That does not need to be returned. But now there's like a million different Max Headrooms, or so it felt like.
Mm-hmm.
There was sort of different TV series for it, and also like he had a talk show.
Yeah. So there was Max Headroom, the original movie, in which the origin story was created, but this was a telemovie that was created just as an origin for the new, allegedly computer-generated video jockey.
Right.
That would be on Channel 4. And then that was so successful, like they were both so successful that Max Headroom continued to be a video jockey, but then he suddenly had his own sci-fi series on the ABC network, which remade that pilot movie and went on for 2 seasons. And that is often a delight. Then there's the talk show, the original Max Talking Headroom show, which I believe spawned the Christmas single, Merry Christmas Santa, I'm Sure You're a Lovely Guy.
All right, I haven't heard that one, but I guess link in the show notes.
Yep. And there was the great, for me anyway, I mean, there was always talk of doing a Max Headroom movie because he had conquered so many other mediums. He's great in the Art of Noise remix of a song called Paranoia.
Okay.
That is just delightful. Link in the show notes. Making great use of Matt for a great video. There was always a threat to have him conquer the cinemas with a film called Max Headroom for President that has never materialized. There's a great coda for Max Headroom in which Channel 4, his origin, his home, his original home, was doing ads saying that they were no longer be putting out analog signal. They are switching over to strictly digital. So they brought Max Headroom back, but they aged him up so that he was a TV in an old folks home who was being wheeled around by someone who didn't care, who was constantly going on about how great the 80s were.
Oh. And it was still being played by Matt Frewer there.
Absolutely. Always Matt Frewer. Don't accept any substitutes.
He's delightful. I was a huge fan of him on the American Max Headroom. I was a huge fan of him on his show Dr. Doctor. I was alive in the 80s and I watched Webster and Dr. Doctor, apparently.
I love Matt Frewer. Matt Frewer is brilliant in almost everything, though he is one of the worst Sherlock Holmeses I have ever seen. But Matt Frewer is a delight. I love it when he shows up in movies. Even the worst movies, he really livens up. He's been everything. I mean, he was the voice of the Pink Panther, weirdly enough, when they decided to give that character a voice for the first time. Lots of strange stuff that he's been in. But in short, Max Headroom, like, see it with someone you love. The series is often quite good, like the sci-fi series. It has its clunkers, to be sure, but it's an interesting show. The character is fun. The clips of him on David Letterman, or even like the clips of him being a VJ, are a lot of fun. There's a lot of good Max Headroom content out there.
And if Shot Factory hasn't put together a DVD box set of the 2 seasons of Dr. Doctor. I don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, they put out Max Headroom. Why don't they put out this? If you've been affected by the issues on this show, if you are an extra in City on Fire, or if you'd like to ask us anything, get in touch with us. Our website is itsjustashow.com, and we're on Twitter at itisjustashow. We'd love to hear from you. This show is made possible by listeners like you. For as little as $1 an episode, you can help us research and record this show, and you can listen to all our superfan bonus bits. Find out more at itsjustashow.com/Patreon or patreon.com/itsjustashow. And if you want to follow up on anything that was mentioned today, you'll find links in our show notes at itsjustashow.com/episode/95.
All right. Can we finally, please, for the love of God, get out of the 70s for once?
That's a tall order. In fact, some would say that's an incredibly strange order.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no. I've heard about this episode.
Yes, you have. We are out of the 70s. We are into the 60s. Well, I'll just reveal the title is indeed The Incredibly Strange Creatures Who Stopped Living and Became Mixed Up Zombies from Season 8, Episode 12.
Okay. I haven't seen this episode before, and people have made me think that maybe I don't want to.
Fun fact, this is the episode that made me give up on Season 8 and most of the sci-fi era.
Hopefully this won't cause us to give up on the podcast.
Yep. This is we cry uncle at episode 98.
All right. Well, we're going to do this. It'll be good. We'll have a nice time. We'll find something to talk about. It'll be a lovely conversation with good friends and great oldies when we return next week to the incredibly strange creatures and mixed up living and mixed up zombie something or other. But until then,
good luck. We're all counting on you.
This city's on fire. Take it away, Theme Squad. It's a little upsetting, but it's what are you going to do?